Speaking of tension, this actually leads to our second question, which is, what would you do with a runner who is lacking in their hamstrings and in their glutes? They're lacking tension and they can't kind of like their hammies and glutes basically are not working properly. How
hmm
would you take that person through a 60-minute session to have them feel better afterwards?
Okay, let's take it step by step. First of all, if you're asking such a question, that's already extremely sophisticated because you know that your hamstring and your glutes are an issue. Cool. That's already like a huge step further. Let me tell you a quick story to begin with, because sometimes we can see the forest for the trees when we're training people for sports. I'm going to tell a story because where I'm heading towards is I'm not training somebody for a sport. I'm preparing their bones and their muscles to do whatever they want in their sport. That's the difference between training and sports. The story goes like this. It's a super quick story. There's three fish swimming in the ocean. There's one old fish and two young fish. The old fish is on his own, swims by. The young fish like kind of they pass on and they meet each other. And the old fish is asking the two young fish like, "Morning, boys. How's the water?" And they don't say much. They don't think about it much. They just go along their way. And like 5 minutes later, one of the young fish asks the other one, is like, "What the hell's water?" And that's something I see a lot happening in training right now. Is we're talking about bones, we talk about muscles, but we don't know actually what training means.
Mm.
So let me get back to the runner. Okay, let's start playing my game again. So we have two players with bones and muscles. We have goals. In that case, it's I guess running faster is or longer is pretty good goal for a runner, or with less pain. What are the rules? So we have one hip position we have to take care of with three bone rules, and we have three muscles that we have to consider. So what is the hip position? It's the neutral hip. We have obviously the glutes and the hamstrings we have to consider in terms of muscles, and we have to obey to certain bone rules so that those muscles can actually start working properly. Um, so how does it work? If a runner shows up to my gym, um, I know that the glutes. I'm just gonna start with the glutes. So I'm gonna do three exercises with them, and that's it. The first exercise is going to be, I'm going to name all three and I'm going to explain what I'm going to do. I'll do the frame carry with them. I'll do a sandbag box squat with them. And I'll do a chainsaw rope pull with them. So the only point of me training a runner is making sure that their glutes and their hamstrings are capable of expressing, of doing their three jobs while running, which is lengthening, shortening, and stabilizing. My job is to make sure that all of those three jobs are equally balanced. So what are those three exercises for? The frame carry. The frame carry is super simple because it teaches your glutes, as we talked before, to stabilize your hips. That means that's actually the main function of your glutes is if you squeeze your booty, that means your hips are extended. That's and the other main function is to look good. But in training, the glutes are for extending your hips, right? So the frame carry is for teaching your glutes to stabilize while moving. Maybe that's not unimportant for running because once your hip starts shifting and you run a lot, that means I need the glutes to keep my pelvis neutral so that my hamstring can actually start doing the job. If my hip tilts, and most of the time, 99.9 tilts forward, so in that stripper position,
Mhm.
that means you're going to change the angle for your hamstring. The attachment on the pelvis, once
Mhm.
it tilts, changes what the hamstring can and will do. So this is changing the rules. So teaching the glutes how to stabilize through
I'm
the
sorry, a
frame carry.
question here.
Yep.
When is then because I'm imagining if at the kind of like the juncture where the glute and the hip meet and the hamstring meet, if if that area gets wonky, is then like kind of like downstream of reactions? Like, is that where we see like knee issues, ankle issues? Is that
Yeah.
kind of like the problem then?
Yes. So here's the hip's complicated, but it's not. It's not complicated because you can try this right now. You can stand up, squeeze your booty, and try to let your knees cave in or your foot cave in. You can't
Mhm.
unless you let go of your booty and you start tilting your hips. Now, the only thing we have to do is, quote unquote, is give you more time for that glute to work while you're running.
Mhm.
That means the longer your glutes can maintain your hip position, the longer you can maintain your hamstring position and your hamstring tension, the longer you can avoid your knees caving in, the longer you can avoid your ankles caving in.
Mhm.
This is not a 1-0 game. This takes time and you can never avoid it because if you run for 24 hours, it's going to happen. If you run for 25 hours, it's going to happen at some point.
Mhm.
Training is to push that, um,
The
to push
threshold.
that time,
Okay.
that threshold, that timestamp
Mhm.
further out and out. That's what literally training is. Training is not for avoiding it at all. This is not possible, right? Because I mean, it's muscles, it's friction, it's gravity. There's just stuff you work against. So the picture perfect approach from another world, the medical world, this is disillusional. This is not happening. Training is for pushing that point as far out in the future as possible so you tilt less after running. Maybe like 30 minutes in, and next time it's like 35 minutes in, and next time it's like 37 minutes in, and then it's 38 minutes in. It's very precise work, but it's not like either you have it or you don't.
Mhm.
You have it for longer or you have it for less. That's all I'm saying. Okay, back to the runner problem. Frame carry, stabilizing the glutes, and the only hip rule or the only bone rule I have for frame carry is super simple. Small steps, hips neutral, that's it. Okay. The second is sandbag box squat. So now we're going to teach you glutes and hamstrings to work um, lengthening, eccentric, whatever you want to call it. It's the same principle. So that means your hip starts here, you load your hips, you go back, and then your hamstring are going to lengthen, and you're going to teach your hamstring how to absorb tension when it gets longer. That's a job it has to do, and it's as important as stabilizing or producing. That's all we're going to care about on a sandbag box squat. Now, there's a couple more hip rules here because first one is hips neutral, as always. That's the first one. If you don't know what to do, keep your hips neutral, squeeze your booty, and try to hold it as long as you can. The second one is as important. Your knee has to stay above or behind your heel, ankle, whatever you want to call it. Because once you shoot your hips back, you're lengthening your hamstrings. Once you're bringing your knee forward, that changes the length of the hamstring, but that's passive. So you have to keep the starting point of your knee where it is, and the only thing that's going to move is going to move your hips back, right? It's not about the knee itself. It's about the starting point from the hamstring at the knee. Muscles are attached with tendons to bones. That's where the attachment of the hamstring is. If you change that point, the hamstring is going to change too, and we don't want to see that, right? Um, that's what we do the sandbag box squat for. And the third one, the third exercise is the chainsaw rope pull. This is you bending over, you grabbing a rope, and you're literally swiveling your hips up, teaching your hamstring to shorten. That means producing tension while under load. All right, super simple. So we have the hamstring and glutes. We're going to teach 3 jobs to them, and we have certain bone rules we have to apply to because otherwise we're changing the game and we're changing the equation. So that's why tension with position both is so important because muscles move bones, but bones set up muscles for success. If you change position of bones, obviously the length or the position of the muscle is going to change too. And this is not going to allow you to teach the muscle what it's supposed to learn. And that's where bones displace and small muscles takes over and shit starts hitting the fan. So those are the only 3 exercises I would do with every single runner on earth. Get really good at those three exercises, and I promise you will run longer, faster, more efficient, with less pain, whatever it is. But this is based on position with tension and not on the exercise per se.